Welcome to the Counseling Podcast. My name is Jonathan Kittle, and I'm joined today with Becky Hecht. We are counselors located in Greenville, South Carolina, at a group private practice called Wellspring Counseling. And very glad to have you, very excited, Becky, to be talking to you today.
Thanks.
We are talking about all things related to trauma.
Yes.
And so that is a word that lots of people use. Everyone's kind of heard about trauma. Everyone knows, I think, that generally going through something traumatic can have a real impact on people's relationships, their feelings, their thinking, their decision-making, all sorts of kind of mental health realities in the present. But at the same time, while it's broadly kind of acknowledged and understood, there's a lot of mystery and there's a lot of confusion. And so we are going to discuss what trauma is, how the brain responds, and a cool model that you're trained in.
Awesome.
Thanks for being here. Let's jump in. So Becky Hecht is a counselor here at Wellspring, and you've been here several months, almost a year. I can't remember exactly when you started, but Becky has kind of like dual specialty. You have a lot of experience in training, doing play therapy, so working with very young kids. And not all counselors are well trained in that. And I know you're continuing to kind of track towards the registered play therapist certification, which is really cool. But today we're talking about trauma.
We are.
Because that's been another specialty that you've really leaned into, working with children. I know you've seen a lot of kids, some here at Wellspring and then some at kind of some partner sites where we've worked, Front Porch Housing, if you're in Greenville, and you may know that. And you see lots of folks who've been through trauma. And that seems like that's been a topic, like an area of focus that has really interested you.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about like your training or your background. Why trauma? Why has that become kind of an interest?
That is an interesting question. Yeah. So I could talk about trauma all day. That's probably become my favorite work, is just helping clients who have experienced trauma have freedom. Why? Because I see that there's hope, and I've seen change, and I've seen it fast.
It's amazing.
I actually feel like it's easier to work with than some other mental health issues.
Wow.
Because of the tools that I have, the training that I have.
Yeah.
As a little girl, I remember reading books about trauma stories. And so it's just always kind of been on my heart, like wanting to help someone who just feels stuck in a loop that they can't get out of.
Yeah.
So here, as a counselor, I get to do that every day. And it is such a blessing. And I always tell my clients, thank you for letting me have the privilege of coming on this journey with you. So I really kind of count it as a partnership of journeying with them through their trauma.
Yeah, that's really cool. It really is like a sacred space that exists between counselor and client. Well, let's just continue the topic of trauma. Maybe a good place to start is let's try to define it. Like, it is such a buzzword. I know we were talking about that earlier, that the word is used so frequently, and it can mean a lot of different things to different people. How would you define trauma? What is trauma?
Right. Yeah, trauma has come to mean a lot of things in our society today and kind of morph into lots of different definitions. But trauma in itself is an experience or a series of experiences that a person has encountered that has not been able to integrate into their life. So maybe it has caused them to feel emotionally dysregulated or create a sense of panic. It can be that's what's so hard. It's not something we can really nail down because trauma can be very different for different people. I would say it's subjective. So what could be traumatic to me may not be traumatic to you. And the kind of the bedrock of what determines that is our vulnerability. So I'll give an example. Let's say that you and I get in the same type of car accident, but your life is stable right now. Relationships are healthy. And in my home, relationships are not. And I kind of feel at my wit's end, and then I get into this car accident. That could be traumatic to me and not traumatic to you. Based on, it's kind of like if you have one brick, but I've got four, and then we put one more on top. Then it makes the whole system fall down.
It has to, when we talk about trauma from like a clinical presentation, it has to do with like our response.
Yes.
The subjective kind of experience. Yeah, and we know this, right? Lots of people go to war. Not everyone comes back with the same effect. Or lots of people go through 9/11 or go through a hurricane or something really awful, but we don't all respond the same way.
Yeah.
So there's a subjective reality. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah. A subjective reality. Right.
Okay. Is it important to also distinguish like the objective event, like sometimes I hear people refer to things as trauma and I'm like, that doesn't sound like that big of a deal. What do you think?
Yeah. Okay.
Is that okay to talk
I have
about?
two thoughts here. So to you, that doesn't feel like that big of a deal, but to them, it could. And that could be their subjective reality, and that feels traumatic. But it is important to say there is an objective event. There's something outside of them that has, or maybe within them, that has happened to them. It is something outside of our everyday routine. So, I mean, I could give a list of all the different traumatic events, but we all know what those are.
Yeah.
But I say also within us, because you could have like this mental health, or a physical diagnosis that does happen to you, and that's something within you, but it's a diagnosis given to you, and that could be traumatic.
Yeah. And then when it overwhelms us, when it overwhelms our ability to cope, or we get stuck, and not everyone gets stuck in the same ways.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's also, just to be very brief, there's trauma and there's complex trauma, and that complex trauma could be just a routine of everyday life that feels very taxing to you.
Yeah.
And not this big event, but that still could be traumatic to a person.
Right. Yeah, when you think about like going through small, really hard things, but they're smaller, but they exist for years.
Yeah.
Or they come at the hands of like caregivers or someone who should have been there for you.
Right.
Versus a car crash, which is
Right.
very, very one-time, acute,
Right.
particular event.
So I think of my clients' parents who have children who have ADHD or other mental health diagnoses that affect their behavior. And to that parent, that could be complex trauma day in and day out of, okay, here we go again.
Yeah. Well, let's talk maybe about, I know we wanted to talk about the brain.
Yeah.
So
I love the brain.
we were chatting not long ago with a colleague in the community about how we don't think about our brain like we think about other organs in our body sometimes, but our brains are obviously very important. It's part of who we are. It's part of our physical reality. And of course, it affects our mental state, our emotions, our thoughts. So if the brain is impacted, that's a big deal. How does trauma impact the brain?
Hugely. Yeah. We don't think about the brain like we do other organs, like my stomach's hurting, or I've got anxiety in my chest. But what happens in our neurobiology kind of feels like a mystery to some people. So
Sure. Yeah.
yeah, when a traumatic event occurs, our brains go through what we could call the fear circuitry. So it's kind of a cycle. So in the front of our brain is our prefrontal cortex. And in the prefrontal cortex, that's where we have reasoning, decision-making, rationality. And when something traumatic happens, our body goes into survival mode, and that flips off. And what flips on is in our limbic system, we have our amygdala, and that is the house of our emotion. It's our reactive, instinctual part of our brain. And our brains were designed special so that we can protect ourselves So this is the work I do with a lot of my clients. Like, look at how your body protected you, your brain protected you in that trauma.
You needed to have kind of your frontal cortex, your
Yes.
thinking, you needed to have that go away.
Yes, so that you can respond quickly.
Yeah.
So that you could run, so that you could fight back, so
Right.
that you could get out. Right. But what happens is we're living in that emotional brain and we don't have the logic. And so we don't have the ability to make decisions. And when trauma is complex or occurs over time, we're just living in that emotional house and our decision making flips off.
And so let's talk a little more about what then happens
Yeah.
when your decision making is flipped off and you're just living in the emotion. Tell me more about like, what does that look like or what does that mean for people?
Yeah. So, so the amygdala, there's a book that I read with some kids in my therapy. It compares it to a warrior.
Okay.
And I love that comparison. It's our warrior. It's protecting us. However, it's like an alarm bell or a watchtower. It's looking out for danger. But our amygdala is not discerning between what is dangerous and what isn't yet dangerous. So like, let's say, for example, there's smoke in the house. Our amygdala instinctually responds and we have this big reaction, emotional reaction. We get into our fight or flight or freeze system. Like we fight back, we run, or we're frozen in space. But in reality, it was just smoke from the toaster.
Yeah.
And there wasn't actually danger. And so what happens when you have trauma is our emotional brain perceives lots of things as danger that aren't necessarily dangerous.
Yes. So is it like, it's like all or nothing.
Yeah.
If there's signals or signs, or sometimes people refer to them as triggers,
Right.
things that like wake up this alarm system.
Yes.
But for at least for some moments, our brain codes it like it's real fire.
Right.
Am I following you?
Yes, we're responding like it's real fire, but it's just smoke.
Smoke from the toaster.
Yeah, smoke from the toaster.
Just mom cooking popcorn.
Yes. And you brought up triggers, which I think is a really important word. And that's also kind of a buzzword we use today. That was triggering. Oh, that triggered me.
Yeah.
But also on the one side, it's like we are becoming more educated on what triggers are, which is great. Triggers are a reminder of a traumatic experience that we don't necessarily, or that we're not even conscious of. So these could be smells, tastes, words, feelings. I've had street signs, going into certain buildings, seeing people, and it brings back the emotional feelings that we had when we had that trauma originally.
And we're not even aware.
It's unconscious.
It's unconscious.
Sometimes
Often.
the work is to become conscious of them.
Yeah.
And, oh, okay, so that was a trigger. That's why I'm feeling this way. Let's stabilize. But unless you're doing the work, yeah, you're not conscious of what's happening.
One of the things I'm fascinated by is more and more trauma clinicians seem to talk about the importance of the body. You know, Vanderkolk's famous book, The Body Keeps the Score, right? Which is New York Times bestseller, been around a while now. Can you talk some about that? And I think, is it related to what we're saying? Like, sometimes we're not even aware that these memories, that these experiences of the past are like living inside us almost, and they're stirred up and they're awoken.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that, because I'm fascinated and then sometimes a little confused. And I think that confuses people. Like, what do you mean it's in my body?
Yeah. So traumatic events, because our prefrontal cortex is turned off, our hippocampus actually is also not processing this traumatic event. And the hippocampus is that's the part of the brain that helps to contextualize a memory and to store it as a memory. And so what's happening is that event is being processed by the amygdala, which is the emotional house, right? And it's being stored in the body, not as a memory, like you would think, oh, I woke up this morning and I brushed my teeth and then I went to the store. It's being stored in our bodies, in our muscle memory, in feeling memories, sensory memories, autonomic memories, which means like we would respond quickly, in our cells.
But not, again, it's fascinating to think it's not when we realize, well, we are biological creatures, right? So, but it's not maybe what we would typically think of. It's not stored as like a conscious memory. Sometimes it's loaded in or it lies somewhere outside of our awareness.
It's wild, right?
Yeah.
Our brains are so special and so interesting, fascinating. Yes. So often the contextual information associated with a traumatic event is not stored either. Meaning, a person may have an image of the trauma and the feelings in their body, but not if they were to be asked what happened. I don't really know. I don't know where I was and what I was doing. I don't have all the information that surrounds that event.
Yeah.
And that's normal. That's what our brain does to protect us.
Yeah. Yeah. It needs to just act. It doesn't have time to think about all that stuff or store it. That's kind of a waste of energy, maybe.
Right. We're in survival.
Yeah.
In that moment, it's survival and it's moving through the event so that you can get out of it.
Yeah.
But then we don't really get out of it. It kind of follows us.
Yeah. That's the bind, right? Sometimes I'll explain to clients, like, that's the P in PTSD. Like, when you were going through the event, your brain did this amazing survival thing to kind of like compartmentalize the horrific reality of this. You didn't process it. You didn't have time to think about it. You didn't have time to kind of dwell on it. You just had to survive.
Yeah.
But then 6 months later, a year later, when you're in a different environment, it's almost like it doesn't go away. Talk a little bit about some of the symptoms that people have in their experience that would begin to tell them that maybe trauma is part of their story. Because as we're talking, we're not always aware. We don't always have the memories. We can't just kind of talk through this clear account. But people start experiencing symptoms. What should we be on the lookout, either in ourselves or in our loved ones?
Yeah. So for PTSD or just kind of trauma-related experiences, I would say feeling hypervigilant, like you are scanning a room, or you have a very strong startle response, or you feel this feeling of not being safe and not really knowing why.
Yeah, not knowing why.
And you're not going to know why. Or you may not in that moment. Flashbacks of these horrific images that keep you up at night or maybe follow you through the day. Triggers, kind of recognizing, I kind of feel triggered and I don't know why.
So I'm like emotionally reactive to something.
Yes.
I am maybe a little over the top, or it is out of proportion to the present.
Yes.
Because there's some past thing charging it.
Right. Okay. So we call that in therapy like emotional dysregulation. But basically what that means is that emotionally you're not responding in a way that warrants that response. I don't know if that makes sense. So
no, I'm following.
Your response is over the top or underwhelming.
Yeah, interesting.
The other thing I would add to that,
please,
and I've had lots of clients come and say, I have this feeling like I've had this pain in my stomach and I've sought physicians' help and it just won't go away and I don't know what it's from. And through my work with them, we often realize, okay, this is a somatic memory stored in your body from a traumatic memory that you don't remember.
Yeah.
And we can do the work and then it's gone.
It's amazing.
And it's crazy. I've seen clients who have pain in their feet, in their hands, in their neck and stomach, and back are pretty routine, but like the weirdest places.
Yeah, very interesting. No way to know with a certainty. We don't scan people when you come in. There's no, like, we can't put you under a microscope and say trauma from 1989.
Right.
But many times there is trauma. Mm-hmm. It's so cool. So do you want to talk a little bit about the treatment itself? I mean, you kind of already talked about it. I know it excites you so much.
I love it so much.
So Becky's trained in accelerated resolution therapy. A master level credential there, which is more than advanced. All the different.
I've done the most
levels.
training that I could, and I'm like, let's do some more.
Accelerated resolution therapy, A.R.T. Is that how people refer to it?
Yeah, A.R.T. And it is not a creative like painting and coloring.
Not that kind of art therapy. Though you do that.
Although I do that
with kids.
Yes. Okay. So accelerated resolution therapy. what is it? Okay. So we're using A.R.T. where we start with bilateral eye movement. And all that means is that you're moving your eyes back and forth from the left to the right. Could look, like this.
Yeah.
I'm using my hand. I have you put your eyes on my hand and I go like this. I also have clients who have problems with some problems doing that, and I have sensors.
Okay.
But the hand is preferred. And what's happening when you do bilateral eye movements is you're accessing both your left and right hemispheres of your brain.
Right.
And doing that allows you to be very creative, access problem solving by using both. And then it's tapping into your parasympathetic nervous system so that your body's relaxing. So there have been multiple studies, and the heart starts to slow, your breath starts to slow, your body temperature increases. And we do that on purpose so that we can pull a distressing memory forward without it being overly taxing to you.
Yeah. This is like a newer version. I know I'm not trained particularly in this, but this comes out of EMDR. Is that correct?
Yes. So the founder of A.R.T. was EMDR trained and kind of was rogue.
Yeah.
And then she created A.R.T.
Well, a lot of people may be familiar with EMDR. I feel like more and more people understand eye movement desensitization reprocessing, which was one of the first models that talked about bilateral stimulation as you're talking. So I don't want to miss this because this is a lot, and clients are often wondering, what is this? Is this like some magical thing? It's not magic.
No.
But you're saying, if I'm hearing you, clients in therapy, if they want to do this trauma work,
Yes.
and if it is warranted, you would want them to kind of pull forward a distressing memory.
Yeah.
And then through the stimulation and through the other work, the other interventions we're going to learn about, it helps them find relaxation, find calm.
Yeah, actually, it rewires that memory entirely, which I'll talk about.
Please,
here.
yeah, tell us.
Okay, so when we're always building neural pathways in our brain. Something happens, we build a neural pathway. So trauma happens, we build a neural pathway. So this is simplifying things, but let's say car accident, it was really horrific, traumatic, and now there's a fear of red lights or of green, whatever, the highway.
Yeah.
And there's this neural pathway. I think of driving, I think of my fear, and your body then responds.
Yeah.
With A.R.T., so we're using the bilateral eye stimulation to be calming. We're bringing to mind a distressing image. We call it a scene in A.R.T. So it's kind of like, watch yourself in this experience. Watch yourself in that car accident. And we alternate from the scene to processing out the emotions and the sensations that are associated with that scene. So like we said, memories are stored in our bodies, in our muscles, and we're pulling those out and we're separating them from the event, from the memory. So that's what's left is this memory without sensations and emotions attached to it.
Right.
And it's just factual. It's not emotional to us anymore.
Yeah. Wow. So you kind of toggle back and forth between the scene, the memory, but then that becomes a felt experience in the present. Like they begin to feel and notice emotions, body sensations, tightening of chest, that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And then you're helping them kind of land in a different place.
Remove them, lessen them, process through them. And then you're left with just a memory. And then what we do is we actually replace that memory with something positive.
Talk about that.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. I mean, it sounds like we are detangling, we're kind of decoupling the memory, the story of what occurred from like the awful emotional, physiological reaction that people have.
Yes.
Am I hearing? Okay.
So I think the easiest way to describe this is to tell my own story. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. So when you're A.R.T. trained, you engage in your own A.R.T. work. And the work that I did, I had a car accident so minor. I mean, I didn't think about this car accident, but I just thought, okay, that would this is vulnerable work. This isn't actually my therapist. Let's do this.
Yeah, you're doing this with another therapist who's
Right.
in training. So.
Yes. So in my ART work, processing my car accident, I had a panic attack and had no idea that this was so meaningful and emotional to me. But what I realized in my work was that I was taken advantage of by the guy who hit me. He didn't want to go through my insurance. He didn't want me to go to the hospital. And I was calling all these people, calling my husband and my dad, and no one was available.
Alone in it.
I was alone in it. And then I was like, I'm a people pleaser. So it's like, fine, okay. I didn't go to the hospital. And 4 years later, I have chronic TMJ from that car accident.
Oh, man.
And so through my ART work, I was able to realize, oh, this is a very meaningful event to me that is stored in my body somatically that I didn't even know was important or meaningful to me.
Right.
And I was able to erase and replace that image of me being taken advantage of. And when I look back now, I'm thinking now of that memory, I actually see myself the way I replaced that image. And I'm standing in front of myself going, no, 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 no. Protecting myself.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild?
It's so we resource these kind of old stories, these old scenes, these old parts of ourselves. Maybe different models will use that kind of language, and we bring to that awful memory like a present resource,
Yes.
an image, a picture,
Yes.
another person, a wiser, stronger future self.
Yeah. Tools.
Yeah,
Put that in a box and take that box and send it down the river.
yeah.
Different things to kind of process and then release it.
Release and to let go.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I know we were talking earlier about internal family systems, and I'm trained in accelerated experiential dynamic psychotherapy. There's different models that do very similar things, and I do think there's a growing consensus that this is my interpretation of the research and literature is that trauma models, therapy models that help people work in a deeply experiential way. You actually begin to feel the distressing feelings. But they help undo that aloneness and they help you land in a different place.
Yeah.
That seems to be what a lot of these models are doing. They do it in different ways, and ART has some really cool, unique tools that they bring to the table. I'm curious if I'm tracking. If
You are.
Okay.
It's very creative. We call it dream world in ART.
Okay.
Because I think the saying is keep the memory, lose the pain. So you have the memory, but we create this new image or this new scene that's very dreamlike, and we know it's not true, but that's what we're replacing it with. So it's creative. It uses your own problem solving tools. So as a therapist, I will sometimes offer, okay, find a punching bag and punch out that anxiety. But I also often say, what does your brain want to do to get rid of that? How do you want to release
Yes,
that? This is your work. I'm just,
Right. You're facilitating it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm here on the journey with you, but you're doing the work. And you also said something that I think is important. It's hard work in the sense that trauma is distressing and it's uncomfortable, but accelerated resolution therapy is accelerated work. And the founder of ART would say, even in one session, you can resolve your trauma.
Depending on what it is.
Depending
right?
upon what it is. So if it's one singular event, one session, done.
Yeah.
If it's complex trauma, I also can use this with phobias, depression, anxiety, OCD, intrusive thoughts. That's kind of a longer process. And I integrate that with some of my other trauma-informed work.
Right.
So yeah, hear that it is hard, but it is like you're walking out of my office having resolved it.
Let's talk a little more about this because I think this is going to be helpful to a lot of people. Can we distinguish maybe how this model particularly is different from maybe older models that focused on resolving trauma? I'm thinking of approaches where basically the therapist has the client tell the story.
Right.
And to talk about the event and to keep talking about the event. And the original thought is through exposure, through what we call habituation, eventually you tell the story so much, it loses its power because you get bored with it in a sense. Maybe that's not what they would say. The downside there seems to be like you're talking about this over and over, and some people, there's certainly evidence that can be helpful for a lot of folks. But I think we would both say we've talked to many people where it doesn't seem to help them.
Right.
In fact, like, I don't want to say it re-traumatizes.
It can.
That can be a buzzword too. And what do we actually mean? But people don't get freed from this pain. So they have the memory and they still have the pain.
Right.
So talk about like how A.R.T. does it differently, particularly like many times not even talking.
Right. That's a core difference. So what you were talking about, my trauma training would kind of define it as like the old trauma model.
Yeah.
The newer trauma model is paying attention to the sensations in the body associated with the trauma, because you can talk about the trauma, but until you pair that with what's going inside your body, or we're not really moving through it, all those sensations are still there.
Right.
So when you can pair a sensation with the traumatic event, then you can move through and lose the pain. And in A.R.T., a lot of the work is done in the client's brain, and I'm kind of just guiding them through it. And I will ask, what do you care to share? And it's up to them how much information they want to share. And I have clients who will tell me lots, and I have clients who will tell me, let's just keep moving. I don't want to. And that's great. And so, yes, it requires very few words from them. And I think the difference is because trauma is stored in our bodies as in our cellular level, it's taking it out of that and attaching it to the memory.
Yeah.
Versus if we're just talking about the memory, we're just talking about the memory, but we're not fixing what's happening in the body.
Yeah, I think we all know this from experience too. And I'm not talking counselors, I'm talking everyone. Like maybe you've been the person that just keeps talking about the thing, but it's always the same thing. Or you're around people and it's like, we're always saying the same thing.
Yeah.
And never moving through it.
Right. Moving through it.
The focus though, when it's on the body, when it's on the somatic symptoms, the sensations, I should say, that's the key difference here.
Yes.
And that, I know this is a bit of jargon, but that's what we mean by like experiential.
Yes.
This isn't just talk therapy where we're just talking about it as if we're at a coffee shop. People are feeling things deeply, but moving through.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I heard a story from someone who said did a lot of trauma work in the old trauma model and went to an inpatient hospital to do some trauma work and said it was horrific. It was like all of my nightmares. I just kept talking and talking and talking and talking about it. And 8 days later, when she came out of the hospital, she said, I didn't know what to do then because I had just lived all of my nightmares again, but they weren't gone. And then I had to figure out how to live life.
Yeah. And to give the benefit of the doubt, we know people who maybe are trained more in that model, they're not trying to do that.
That was also like 30 years ago.
Yes.
That was the old model, right?
Yes,
and so thankfully we've kind of learned more about trauma
right.
and learned how to help it in a new way.
Yeah.
Oh, the wow factor is what I didn't talk about, but
What's the wow factor?
just like my favorite part of A.R.T. is when a client is sitting there and is like, hold on, I'm trying to access that image. Wait, it's gone. I had this happen yesterday. It's gone. What'd you do to me? It's gone. And I'm like, I didn't do it. Your brain did it. And they can't find it anymore.
I didn't think to say this, but I do think it's so good to emphasize, like, we don't really do this to clients. Right. And this is true with AEDP and me. Like, what happens is, like, if they can access core emotion with someone in a safe way, there is this built-in ability that our bodies and brains have to heal. And I wonder if you see the same, if you would kind of see it that way with A.R.T. Like you're not so much doing it, you're facilitating and maybe setting things up so that the body can do its natural thing.
Yeah, which is why like your in-service on person-centered therapy was so important. Like I would say I'm a person-centered therapist who uses ART.
Yeah.
Because unless I'm a safe person to you, you're not going to do it.
Right.
So, and my favorite way of using ART is integrating it into other work that I do, IFS or just trauma-informed or person-centered, just letting them talk and process and
Yeah.
versus like, okay, you're coming in for one session of ART, which works. But yeah, they need to
They need to feel
safe.
safe and feel seen, and then you can do that. The ART work sometimes.
Yes. And so a lot of my clients, I'm like, what do you care to share? Give me abbreviated. Because they want to tell me like everything,
Yeah.
right? Because we have this great rapport. And I'm like, whoop, tell me what you want, but we got to keep.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, I think this has been really helpful to talk about. And I trust for those who've listened this far, I trust that they've been really helped and benefited. Any final words you'd want to say, either about ART or about trauma? Anything you'd want to leave our listeners with? Maybe they have experiences themselves, or they know someone. What would be like a closing thought or a next step you'd want to leave?
Yeah. I would want to say this. If you've had trauma, be kind to yourself. Like, meet yourself with empathy. Recognize that, and that's why we went through the brain, because it's important to understand that this wasn't a choice you made to live this way, and you would change it if you could.
Yeah.
But have empathy for yourself that you've survived in the best way that you can, and find a therapist if you'd want to who will meet you with that empathy.
I love that word. And again, the focus on the biology, the brain reality does kind of, it depersonalizes it in a way. I don't know if that's a good word.
Yeah.
It takes the shame out.
Right.
Like, this is just something that happened to your brain and your body, and you processed it this way for very good reason, to survive.
Yeah.
But we need to update the software a little bit.
Right.
Install the Windows update.
Yeah, you don't have to be stuck.
Yeah.
Don't leave yourself stuck. Because now we have these great trauma tools that, and that's why I love trauma work the most. I actually see that I make the biggest difference in trauma work.
Yeah.
It's with these tools, you can change your lives.
And they're much less invasive. Maybe we could say it that way than they used to be.
Yeah. So have empathy for yourself, but also recognize that your brain was designed this way to help you survive, and that you've survived. And so kind of be proud of yourself that you've gotten this far.
I love that way of looking at it. Well, thanks again so much for the conversation and for sharing your wisdom with us.
I loved it. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.